Hello, everybody. Welcome to another TET dialogue. It's our third in the last 9 months, actually, since we started, which there seem to be, we've done a load of work, but the TET dialogues have been really an important part of TET itself, and not only the awards, but this and collecting resources and being able to put things online from the TET dialogues, the summaries. So we look forward to another great TET evening. We've got a great lineup, and Simeon, who's chairing it, will go through that. But I'd just like to pick up on a few housekeeping rules, very simple. It will be recorded as usual, and there will be a chat function, so everybody will be able to put questions into the speakers through the chat room. But also, of course, any comments or any links you have, that would be great too. Have to also remember, like you to remember, that actually all the TET dialogues are from ideas and suggestions from yourselves. So do let us know anything that you want to put forward, you think would be interesting to the network. And we have nearly 1,000 people within our community at the moment, and it's growing all the time. So different ideas, different aspects of it. So just let us know, that would be great to include some more as we go through this year and come up to our first anniversary in March. The other thing just to know, the TET awards, the Inspire Future Generations awards that we had last November now, and the ceremony was really a great success, and that's been spreading around. And there's the resources, the shortlist with the summary of their projects are on our TET website, so do go there as well. And we'll be announcing the next Inspire Future Generation Awards in the summer. But in the meantime, we're also launching an inaugural Architecture into Education Awards, which are actually geared towards teachers and collaborators in the formal education settings through school children and students. And that will be coming out in the next month. So keep an eye on that. And if you really want to keep up to date, it's a great way is to join our email list, which again is on the website. Last but not least, I'd just like to thank everybody. We all like to thank everybody for all the great support we've had. There's been so many different ways you've all been supporting us. And that really has helped us to kind of take ourselves forward, especially over the last 9 months. And also I'd like to just to thank Orford Hall, Monaghan and Morris, because they have given us additional support, which is really incredibly helpful. So enough from me and the TET team. I'll hand over to Simeon, who will be looking at the subject today. And as you can see, he's been chaired and shows the panelists here, but I'll let Simeon take over and describe this in much more full than I can. So enjoy it, and we look forward to seeing you again on another TET dialogue.
Thank you, Victoria. I don't have a slide. I just wanted to kind of set the scene and then I'll introduce the speakers. My name is Yunus Shebnaev. I'm a researcher at Birmingham City University, and I'm focusing on the role of teenagers in future smart cities. And as somebody who's interested in involving the perspective of young people in the envisioning and in imagining of future cities, I'm really excited about the projects that we're going to hear about later today. And I was so excited. I did all weekend research playing on the Xbox, looking at gaming. All of our speakers have undertaken projects that help us better understand what it is to navigate and plan the city as a child, teenager, or young adult. And this is due to the technological advances that have provided them with innovative tools that allow those perspectives to become more accessible, interesting, and relevant to adults and decision makers. As someone researching smart cities, I constantly discuss technologies with young people, and routinely have been shown games developed by children in Unity, or have encountered digital native teenagers that have easily blown me away with their computing skills. And new technologies are a fantastic opportunity to expand the conversation about how we design, plan, and deliver our built environment. However, what I'm also really encouraged by is the criticality and ethical mindset with which young people approach many of those technologies, often seeing them through the prisms of inequality, safety, and sustainability. And I'm very optimistic about the emerging technological market and digital market of companies, charities, public entities that are opening the door for young people to engage fully with planning and design in a more meaningful way and more easily accessible way. But there is quite a dark side of the virtual world of gaming, and that hotly discussed metaverse concept. And it's one that we haven't fully understood yet. There is a real risk that commercial entities in society are subverting technology, subsuming it into the traditional methods of education and consulting with young people, therefore reproducing power dynamics of our patriarchal and late capitalist society, but just online. We can already see those processes happening with large commercial entities, borrowing engines from game design, further entrenching current inequalities. We have Decentraland, which is a hotly invested in Web 3.0 application, which on the surface is a slightly worse graphical version of Second Life. I don't know if people here have played Second Life. I used to play in the 2000s. But it's very appealing to investors as it introduces scarcity in the digital conversation. Engineered scarcity in the digital world is here to stay. And so often, if we are judged by the advances of NFTs, the non-fungible tokens, that appeals to young people as an aspirational route to fortune. And I have actually already lost a student on my course to alternative careers of Bitcoin investing. So those conversations are very much prominent in that demographic. The emerging economy of the online world is one that's often driven by children and young people and largely ignored by most of us in the ethical dimension. Recently, revelations by the journalist Quentin Smith of We Play Games showed that underbelly of Roblox, which is one of the biggest companies in that world, a $45 billion company, largely populated by children under 13, but one that operates in an unregulated industry of user-driven game development, which allows child labor exploitation, underground market of financial speculations, and quite often abuse and exploitation. So whereas we might sometimes dismiss the virtual world as a fad, it has real life implications on the lives of its users, and those are often young people. And I think as we scale up in the built environment and we adapt digital solutions across industries, I think we need to be very wary of the underlying logic that underpins many of those digital advances and the companies that have actually created them. But I'm sure the projects we're going to hear about today are going to show an alternative way of developing digital solutions to involving young people directly relevant to architectural and design practice. So I'm really excited to hear about the projects. And today we have three speakers. We have Dr. Sarah Kandiracci, who's an associate director at the International Development Group and lead of the Inclusive and Resilient Cities at Arup. We have Dr. Bobby Nisha, who's lecturer Department of Urban Studies and Planning at the University of Sheffield, and Blaine Quinn, who's a curator of learning at the Irish Architecture Foundation. So I'll introduce our first speaker, and then it's off to Sarah. So Dr. Sarah Kandiracci is an urban planner and researcher with 16 years of professional experience working in the field of sustainable urban development and planning across Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. She holds a PhD in heritage-led urban planning with a thesis on the role of cultural and heritage and social inclusion and placemaking in East Africa. She's currently an associate director in the international group at Arup and member of the leadership team, and leads the work on inclusive and resilient cities and on child-centered design and planning. And there is a fantastic report that Arup has generated on this, so go check it out. Her passion lies in working multidisciplinary teams, using applied research and stakeholder engagement and participation as entry point to innovation and sustainable transformation. And she's worked with the UN, UNESCO, the Development World Bank, local governments and NGOs across the world. So without further ado, off to you, Sarah, and I will join in when your time's out.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for inviting me to this a very interesting, important event. I prepare a brief slide deck just to help visualizing the work. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yes, I'm Sarah. I'm an urban planner's background, and as Arup, we've been doing quite a lot of work on child-centered design and planning over the past years, developing frameworks, tools, methodologies to understand how to create more inclusive cities that work for children, that work for everyone. And as part of our work, we also develop different tools and methods to engage with children on one hand, and on the other hand, also to influence decision makers and planners on how to embed through their work child-friendly design principles and approaches. So today I'd like to present two tools developed by ARUP. One is called YAR, which is an augmented reality co-design tool. And the other one is Urban 95 virtual reality that is an experience tool to advocate for friendly design and planning. So starting with YARD. So YARD is a visioning tool that we developed to support the co-design of public spaces with children, but also with communities more broadly, and to help them articulate and communicate their intentions and ideas to designer planners in a more effective way, basically to create a common language for them to express their ideas to planners and designers. YARD was developed, as I said, by ARUP because of the growing recognition and need to prioritize community perspectives in placemaking interventions, and also to make these interventions more context relevant, user-friendly, and effective. YARD is an augmented reality tool where users can use their mobile devices, iPad, phones, to drag and drop elements on the scene while on location. So so that they can envision what a future space could look like, and then they can share their opinions on the space, and so at the same time influencing the design outcomes and decisions. YARD is a growing library of assets that can be used for different contexts and different purposes. Here you can see urban furniture assets that we developed for awareness creation and also for placemaking. In fact, we have like bike racks that have the shape and size of a car, sand pits, a mobile library, as you can see in this picture. We also started to explore assets to contribute to climate adaptation and ecosystem restoration. So we added a sustainable urban drainage system, a pocket park, green walling, and 2 different walkways. And for some of these assets, we also, the moment you locate them, you put them in the location, you can also visualize the impact that such interventions would have in building climate resilience. We also developed some assets considering the needs of vulnerable contexts. In fact, we partner with different organizations in Kenya, Jordan, and Lebanon, where we're working in informal and refugee settlements. We created assets that are particularly relevant for those contexts, like water tanks or hand washing units or toilets. Also, we created some posters that are focusing on creating awareness in relation to COVID prevention. And an essential aspect of digital service development is user discovery and testing. In fact, we have been developing and while testing YARD in different contexts with different users. So we have iterated and improved the app and service experience. And through our work, we learned that YARD would be a great way to get children to be more engaged in design and planning, especially with children that maybe are more shy or that struggle with drawing. So basically giving them some additional tools for engagement. When we tested YARD in Jordan, we also learned about the importance to use visual tools to create a common language, a common spatial language to bring urban planners and communities together, to talk about urban environment and also to shape it together. And these are some pictures when we used YARD in New York over the summer, when we were doing an envisioning exercise with the local communities for future open streets. And now I'd like to talk about the second tool that we developed, which is an Urban 95 virtual reality, which is an empathy tool that we developed in collaboration with the Bernabéu Foundation to experience a city as a young child. The Bernabéu Foundation is a Dutch foundation who is working globally to advocate for and create better conditions to improve the living condition of and the well-being of young children and their caregivers. And the Urban 95 work that is focusing on urban intervention is driven by the question you can see in the screen, which is if we could experience the city at 95 centimeters tall, which is the height of an average 3-year-old child, what would you change? And we use this question as a starting point to develop the urban virtual reality experience. The foundation, in addition, works across different countries from Peru, Colombia, India, Turkey. And so we started by understanding those contexts and identifying what are the challenges that children face in those contexts. We identify some common languages, some common conditions that we try to use for our virtual reality. So we're basically using these geographies as a starting point. So we design a small fictional neighborhood that could be basically anywhere. And so it's like a theater set that the user would digitally enter into virtual reality. And you can see this from a perspective of 95 centimeters tall, which is, as I said, the height of a 3-year-old healthy child. In this virtual context, everything around you is far larger, louder, and more overwhelming than you would experience as an adult. And we are now working with the Bern-Lavaria Foundation also to introduce design interventions and show how, through a series of interim measures, communities and local districts can own and put changes in cities at local level and make positive, lasting change to the lives of their children, but also for the entire community. And here you can see our regional streetscape, then typing, and then finally reconfigure stages. I show you now a video. So in this short video, you can see some of the virtual scenes that we've created. We basically have created a micro simulation of a living, breathing city, which is populated by traffic, gigantic cars. We also work with our acoustic team to generate a soundscape to the city, also using object-based audio from traffic that is generated in real time. And all the experience that you can see here is from lower down, so basically from a child perspective. And in this new version of the virtual reality, you can also see some of the interventions that can be created as a solution to the challenges that we initially identified. And to conclude, we use this tool in different events, from the World Economic Forum to C40 City Summit, UNICEF Child Friendly City Summit. Different mayors, policymakers, decision makers around the world have tested this virtual reality tool. In fact, this tool is mainly about raising the awareness about some of the common challenges that children currently face in cities around the world, and to encourage decision makers and thought leaders to think, to wear their shoes of a young child, and to think from their perspective, from a 3-year-old perspective, and so to encourage them also to take action to address these challenges. I conclude here, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to share this experience.
Thank you, Sarah. This is fantastic, and I love your reference to an empathy tool. So I hope we can actually expand on that in the discussion. So straight away, we're going to the next speaker. Our second speaker is Dr. Bobinisha. Dr. Bobinisha is a senior university teacher and the program director for the MA in Urban Design and Planning at the University of Sheffield. With background in architecture, her research focuses on the impact of spatial perception and uses immersive virtual reality and eye tracking analytics in VR to understand how people experience and navigate through space. She also studies the pedagogic impact of learning with immersive realities, such as virtual and augmented realities in makerspace settings. So, Bobby, if you're ready, I am handing the baton to you.
Thank you, Semyon. Just give me a second while I share my screen. Is that all right?
You can see it, but not the full screen. Yeah.
Yeah. Is this all right?
Oh yeah, no, yeah, it's fine.
Thank you. I'm sorry I can't see you guys with what's going on here, so which is why I just wanted to double check. Well, thank you very much for inviting me here to TED Dialogues. As Simeon mentioned, I'm Bobby. I work in the Department of Urban Studies and Planning. By background, I'm an architect, urban designer, and I teach design. I think it'll be a good idea to establish some definitions, because when we talk about immersive reality, some terminologies are very interchangeably used, like there's mixed reality, there's virtual, there's augmented. And just to differentiate, VR basically creates a simulation of presence. So there is this idea of presence where you get to experience a virtual environment in the first person. So that's VR. Augmented reality is basically when you can overlay the physical world and the virtual world. If you haven't already, I would highly recommend downloading the IKEA app, and then you can drop pieces of furniture in your everyday home just to see what it's going to be like. So you are overlaying reality one over the other. And in the last few years or so, I've had the chance to work with both VR and AR, both in education with children as well as with the community. And I have to start off this with a story, very short story. Basically, we had a field trip module, international field trip, and we had to cancel it in the last minute because of security issues. But somehow the module has to run because the learning outcomes have to be met. So that was when we thought, so how do we then, if we can't go to that country, that city, how can we bring that here? Like what is the next best thing to do? So we partnered with a gaming company, and then we created 360 videos, and then we managed to run the module with the use of VR. So that was my very first experience of using VR. And interestingly, the students' feedback and how students engaged with the module itself was different. So that was when the spark came in to say, okay, there is something here. So, and then we went on to use VR and AR in our teaching itself. So the first case study is, or at least in my understanding, how we engage with space, like children, us. This historically we've evolved. It was pen and paper. Then we moved on to using computers. We started working with tools like CAD, Revit, SketchUp, 2D and 3D representations of space. And today we are moving into mixed reality, VR and AR, where you can not just look at the space for what it is, but can feel what it is to actually stand there and experience. So we created assessment activities where students will peer review each other's work in VR. They'll create environments, design proposals. And then we created one other challenge where students will create within the VR space itself. So creating in that VR space and 3D printing it. So again, trying to bridge the physical and the virtual world as much as possible. And interestingly, we saw a difference in module attainment all of a sudden after we introduced VR and AR learning. So there was some kind of a learning gain that was happening. So with that, we started working with children. So this was a project with Norfolk School here in Sheffield. And here again, the learning activities included use of VR, AR, 3D pens, and the task for children was to reimagine their play area. So if an architect had this task, they would have come up with swings and seesaws, things we've seen. But interestingly, children, they came up with very interesting ideas like roller coaster with dragon, dinosaurs, etc., etc. And some examples of children's work here, where again, they could model something in terms of what they would like to see in their play area, and then scan it, make it into a digital object, and then recall it in AR, or drop it in VR and then recreate. So they were trying to iteratively design. There's a link to a video here if you are interested, and I'll share the slides as well. And some quotes from what children had to say about the experience. Things like, you can do anything. That sense of agency, that sense of, oh, I am empowered. That was something we saw happening all the time. And things like, and this was a very interesting one, the last one, where it says, remember, you are in first person. So this was actually a child trying to guide his friend to say, like, this is what you should be doing. And then the way he chose to explain was, remember, you are in first person. That was very interesting. So this was our sort of second case study. And moving on, I wanted to extend the boundaries even more. So this was a project with Bolsover Council, where they were trying to engage with young adults to reimagine a rundown marketplace. And in here, what we did was we brought in eye tracking analytics. So basically, we created a VR. So the environment was the marketplace as is. And the game was to find 3 hidden objects. So like a treasure hunt, a ball, a dice, and a teddy bear. So the game was to like walk around here, take as much time as you would like, just go find 3 objects. So we made this into a starting point for a conversation as to, so what do you like? What do you dislike? What do you want to change? And why? Here again, there's a video that gives a summary of what happened, if you are interested. So with sort of all this work, we came to see that there was a distinct pattern with which we engage with space. So egocentric and allocentric. So again, to keep it simple, if we try and relate to space, again, to say like, so I'm here, so the school is on this side of me. So if you relate to space with regards to where you are, that's the egocentric spatial frame. The allocentric is the bird's eye view, where you are not part of that relationship as such, but things sort of exist in relation to each other. And it turns out in the traditional means of engaging with space, so all the drawing and all the 2D and 3D representations we have, those are all only in the allocentric frame. So what VR gives is, it brings in that experience. It brings in that egocentric spatial frame into the equation. So which is why there is that, sense of agency. And we could actually see that from the experiment, the immersive game, because the game was set up in a way that we showed pictures of the neighborhood and then asked participants to describe what they see. And then once they played the game in VR, we again asked the same question as to how would they describe the space that they just walked around. And we saw a distinct sort of theme coming up. So the picture was, that's a road, that's a street, it's a shop. And after the VR game, it became, this is safe. This is good for children. This is peaceful. It's a nice open space. So things shifted. And one of the tasks we gave participants was to draw what they remember. I'm not sure if the image is clear, but there's, again, a distinct difference. So when they looked at the image and tried to recollect the image, there were hardly any lines in the image that they drew. But once they played the VR game, there was pretty much information about where every tree was. So what a mind was able to retain was 6-7-fold more. And just as a close to all of these case studies that I've shared, when we bring in people into the conversation of what this place should look like, and of course, we need to look at the physical dimension, social dimension, and cognitive dimension. And sometimes, because we are limited by what we can show and what we can represent, we feel that, oh, I haven't done enough. So this sense of agency, the sense of this gaze is mine, the space I'm looking at it, I am looking at is like, I'm not sure how to phrase this. Like I decide what I look at instead of someone deciding, like the expert deciding these are the options and decide you like A or B or C. So that's the change in equation. Somehow the expert and the end user is now in the same plane because they have equal agency, equal access to space. So that was my summary of the work we've done so far, and I'm happy to discuss and take any questions.
Thank you, Bobby. This is really interesting. We have time for discussion, but finally we have Blaheen Queen, who's Curator of Learning at the Irish Architecture Foundation. Blaheen has a background in architecture and visual art. After graduating as an architect, she worked in private practice while completing a degree in visual arts practice. She's currently the Curator of Learning at the Irish Architecture Foundations and runs programs including the International Summer School, Architects in School, Open House Junior, and the Youth Manifesto, which actually won the informal learning activity at the TED Inspire Future Generation Awards. So go check that one out. She's an active practitioner in the area of public engagement with architecture and worked on multiple Arts Council supported projects. And she employs visual art strategies to extend public engagement with architecture. But I'm going to pass the word to Blaheen, and she will be able to give us a fuller overview of your career. After you.
Thank you, Simone. Can everyone hear me and see the screen okay?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, good. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much to Victoria Thornton for inviting me to speak today at this TED Dialogue. So as Simone said, my name is Blaheen Quinn. My background is in architecture, visual art and education. And since March 2020, I'm working as the Curator of Learning at the Irish Architecture Foundation. So a little bit about the Irish Architecture Foundation. We're an independent cultural organisation based in Dublin, and we're dedicated to the promotion of architecture as culture. The IF was established in 2005, and we run an extensive public programme of exhibitions, workshops and events, including Open House Dublin, UNOW Next and Architects in Schools for all ages, and we have an extensive youth programme as well. If you're interested in finding out more, the website is architecturefoundation.ie. So today I'm going to speak briefly about 3 projects. Just to say that the technology part of this is just part of the projects. It's not forefronted in the projects. It's not something that I'm working on to a great extent in the learning programme, but it has come into a number of the projects, especially in the past while during the pandemic. So the first project, Architects in Schools, the second one, a Youth Manifesto, and the third, Open House Junior Digital Design Challenge. So Architects in Schools first. This is an initiative providing secondary school students with first-hand experience of the design process under the guidance of architects all over Ireland. And it's funded by the Department of Education, Department of Housing and the Arts Council of Ireland. And we also have a collaborator with the National Museum this year as well. So it's now in its 9th year. 42 architects are delivering workshops in 75 schools all over Ireland. And since 2013, we've reached 256 schools and 7,500 students across a wide range of school types. The student voice is central to the programme, so making a programme that's very relevant to young people, empowering them, giving them a sense of youth, their own voice being very active, a sense of agency and ownership over their own learning. An Architects Design a programme to guide students through the design process. It's an iterative and responsive process. All of the contexts are different, every school, every architect, every group of students. So a variety of kind of different designs emerged. So as part of Architects in Schools, so before I started in the Irish Architecture Foundation, I worked as an architect going into schools between 2013 and 2020. So one of the projects I worked with was in Presentation College Bray in Wicklow in Ireland with 2 teachers, Mike Conway and Clifton Rooney, and a group of students, including Lee Doyle, Robert Moran, Ross Connolly, Jack Hogan, and the rest of the technical graphics class. So I was introduced to a Minecraft project as part of the Architects in Schools project. So on the left-hand side, you can see an image of the school itself. And on the right-hand side, you can see the school created in virtual reality, or in Minecraft as it is right now. And then lower down the image is the school after modifications. So as I said, Jack, Lee, Ross and Robert introduced me to this Minecraft project. I had been speaking to them the week before and we were making models. Like we started on card models and other building materials and two-dimensional drawings and exploring the ideas up into 3D, which is the way I probably would have worked mostly with Architects in Schools. But just because I met them and because they were so involved in this project that I'm going to tell you about, they inspired me, I suppose, to, I learned from them. I suppose the key message here is what I learned from them and what everyone learned from them. So what they did, they were involved in a larger school project. So the Architects in Schools aspect of it is a smaller part related to the 4 students I just mentioned. But just to say that this project isn't an Architects in Schools or an IAF project. It's more of a whole school initiative, but it did inform Architects in Schools going forward in terms of using Minecraft and other technology to imagine spaces. So what they did for this project in 2017 and 18, they created their existing school in a virtual world, and then they reimagined it to align with the Sustainable Development Goals using Minecraft. They won a few awards for it. They were finalists in the Global UN SDG Action Awards, and they also won a Most Innovative Project Eco-UNESCO Young Environmentalist Award as well. So what they did was when they manipulated the base model, they designed a more sustainable and youth-centered school based on the Sustainable Development Goals. And they had a group of 22 student builders. So their work is architectural and very spatially aware and also visionary with regard to sustainability and the innovative use of Minecraft as a design tool. What they did was they took a fundamental look at the education system and the ways in which students are currently educated. They started a conversation and asked questions. They challenged assumptions about school design. They made changes on the Minecraft model to improve their own school. So from their viewpoint, they saw Minecraft as a thinking platform. So one of many possible ways to explore and to visualize their ideas about a new aspirational school, a school architecture to support new ways of learning. And they were also thinking about a future school in terms of the pupils, community, and the world. And for this, they went towards the sustainability model of a school. So these are a few of their key ideas. They had an independent learning hub, which was all about promoting student ownership over their own learning. Open plan learning spaces, fostering collaboration and exchange. A student parliament room, which was all about a collective student voice at community level and communicating that. Wellbeing in nature surrounding the school in an outdoor gymnasium, and a student exhibition space about sharing ideas and creative visions. Solar panels as well to create green energy integral to the school redesign. And open meeting spaces in wildlife, so outdoor learning spaces and environmental awareness and appreciation. So all of this is built on modifications to the existing school building built in the scale of Minecraft, but it's not just the school building, it's the surrounding area as well. So I suppose the key point is there about learning from students. And there were 2 events then that followed on from this. Well, first of all, I learned a lot in the classroom from these particular 4 students, Jack, Lee, Ross and Robert. And we invited them in then to 2 events. So the first event was the skill sharing day for Architects in Schools, and this happened in 2018 and 2019. And what they did was they came in and they taught architects and teachers, so kind of flipping learning on its head, and they came in, they were at school in the morning, and in the afternoon they were teaching architects and teaching teachers, and they loved that. And they were telling them all about Minecraft and how to use it, how it could be used. So following that then, it did take off in Architects in Schools a bit more, and a few more schools used it, whereas up to that point it hadn't really been used in Architects in Schools. And then the other event was a public event, which it was a talk in the evening in November 2018, and we invited these same students in again. So what they did is they screened a 3-minute film and a 9-minute film of the this project. So they uncovered more of the process actually in this event, which was really fascinating. So they talked about working virtually and remotely from home. And at that point, pre-pandemic times, that was quite unusual. I found it like, it was just very interesting to hear about how they collaborated virtually on a third-party server. Also, what was really interesting was that the quieter voices became stronger in this virtual space. So maybe school might express their opinion. They found their voice on this platform. Also very interesting in the way that Minecraft was so familiar to them. So they found it was a very easy way in to visualize spaces. It gave them that ability to visualize in 3D and to communicate this as well, easier than maybe creating it in drawings and model making. And if you'd like to see more about the Architects in Schools project overall, there's a virtual exhibition up on Instagram, on our Instagram page, but I won't be able to go into that in too much more detail now. I'm keeping an eye on the time. I'm actually on 8 minutes, so I'm going to just fly through these last few projects in about 2 minutes and then go from there into the discussion. So this is the second project, Youth Manifesto, Architecture in a Climate Crisis. And this ran in 2020. And we were really happy that this was awarded an Inspire Future Generations Award in the informal learning category. I was very happy to be able to go to London and to receive the award on behalf of myself, the Irish Architecture Foundation, and most importantly, the young people involved. So I have a few kind of main key points here to say in this short time. When I suppose the key message here is about the use of technology then in terms of adapting to an online space during pandemic time. And we used Zoom and Mural. So first of all, thinking about designing the workshops in virtual space in Zoom, they had to be shorter. So 1.5 hours versus maybe a half a day or a day. They had to have a really, really clear structure and common goals for the workshops to in a very definite timeline to take away any uncertainty in time of the pandemic especially. So they had that structure, but yet a very open kind of process within that structure. Also, I ran through each of the workshops with a youth advisor, Maya McClelland, age 15, and then I adjusted the workshops before the actual live workshop based on her feedback. And that really helped as well to facilitate a very open, engaging kind of space. A balance between the group and independent work was supported. So group work happened in the workshops in a series of 3 workshops and 1 informal Zoom campfire, and then the independent work happened between. So many of these students have any previous knowledge of architecture. So this was really inspiring for them to find out a bit more about architecture. They were maybe more involved in climate crisis, both the two together, very kind of fascinating kind of way, and very much led this manifesto. It was also very relevant to them, and it was an iterative process, which was student-led. So just to finish up on this project, Sophie Byrne said that they faced some obstacles, such as communicating solely via Zoom and email, but they were able to overcome these challenges. The workshops were incredibly sociable, she said, and through informal Zoom meetings, we were all able to become closer as a group. So it was about that challenge of adapting to the online space, and for myself as a facilitator, being more used to the real space. And we used a mural as well as Zoom, and students then could decide on their own theme, and we went from there. It was a very youth-centered learning space. I'm not going to go into this third project because I'm aware of time. I'm slightly over time, apologies for that. But just to say that we've been running a digital design challenge as part of Openness Junior for the last 2 years. This is an entry in Minecraft from Rosemary Walsh in the 7 to 10 age category. It's an underwater lily pad house. And this is a house of the future by Helen Boyd, winner in the age 11 to 15 category. So there's some very fascinating entries coming in there. So I'm going to finish up, and there's just some information about the Irish Architecture Foundation, the Twitter, Instagram, and social media. And my email is learning@architecturefoundation.ie if you're interested in finding out more. So thank you all. Apologies for going slightly over time.
Don't worry. I mean, there is a lot of information in all of the talks, and I think I just want to point out that there will be a recording available after this, and also we'll share a written summary of the key points and also hopefully some of the slides. Thank you, Blame. If I can invite everybody on the panel to join me with the camera and sound on. And we have around 10 minutes. Nobody has kind of come in the chat with any questions. So if anybody has questions for panel, please put them forward. But I have one question which is just open for everybody, and I think it'd be nice if each one of you kind of takes the turn. But how has the use of those immersive experiences or digital experiences supported intergenerational learning and dialogue in city making and placemaking? And I think it's not just about the lessons that adults take away, but also what are the measurables? Have actually the use of those tools changed behaviors, or how do you measure that after that? How do you change adults' minds about engaging young people? It could be as open question as you want. Sarah, would you like to start first, maybe, because I think the link there is quite obvious in the second tool. But then obviously, Bobby and Blaine, if you have any points, just jump in, or we'll come to you. We have maybe like 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's a good question. So I decided to present these two particular tools because they were developed for different purposes, even if like looking at the needs and perspective of children. So the Yard co-design tool was developed as a tool for engaging not only children but the broader community in a co-design process, to make it more interactive, more stimulating, also more fun for children. And we have developed it as we tested it. So, and it's still a work in progress, and it will continue growing, because we through users analysis and testing in different contexts, we identify what are the key assets that are relevant for one particular context, or how can we use urban assets, for instance, to influence change and to advocate. Like the example I brought on the bike rack, that is the same that you can find also in London, where I live, where we live, I guess, here. That is not only for placemaking, but also to create knowledge and awareness about how much space a car actually use compared to bicycles. In relation to the Urban 95 virtual reality, it was developed mainly, the first version, for advocacy purposes, because if you design a child-friendly city, you need to understand what are the needs of children. And as adults, especially adults without children or young children, you easily forget what it means to be 95 centimeters height. And so you don't take their perspective, their point of view into design of public space. So through this virtual reality, the real aim was really to help people, grown-ups, to get back to their 3-year-old when they were at that age and that high, so they can really experience the challenges and also how the cars or the trucks or the sound, they are different for children. And so helping them really to empathize with children and to start thinking about it. And then with additional tools that we developed, design principle guidelines, how to embed design principles into their work. So it was really a way for creating more empathy and to create this awareness that is needed as a starting point if you really want to make a change into the design and planning of cities.
Maybe this links some to the idea of the ego-centric understanding of space, but maybe in your work, has using those tools ended up in kind of changing people's minds about different perspectives, or what have been some of the maybe impacts that have come out of it?
I think in my experience, it was the sense of empowerment where the participants, like our children, felt like they had something useful to offer, and that like they're doing something that is valuable for themselves. So that was like the spark that we could see in their eyes, as opposed to showing a photograph and asking, what do you like about this, or what do you don't like about this? So there was a distinct difference. And in my understanding, it was that spatial frame reference where you get to experience the space or understand the space from your perspective, that you feel that, oh, now I have the agency to change it too.
There is a similar question. I mean, Jennifer Scott's put a question in. Blaine, I'll put that to you. What kind of things have really excited and enthused students in that case in the project? Were there any specific elements that really kind of jumped out?
So what kinds of things have really excited and enthused students? I think for me, it would really be about what's relevant to them, finding out being able to listen to young people, find out what is relevant to them, what's interesting to them, what's their lived experience about architecture in the built environment, because they all have it. Not thinking about architecture as other or for someone else or far away or being iconic buildings, but being the backdrop to our everyday life. So finding that what's relevant to them, then what would they like to change? What's interesting to them? What do they want to change? And how can they change it? And facilitating them the opportunities for them to express that change, you know, whether it's through Minecraft, through drawing, through model making, through giving them a platform for their voice, like such as the Youth Manifesto, you know, different kind of platforms so they can express their voice. But also, I mean, taking action. If they have something that really, really excites them, being responsive to that, taking action on it, making it happen for them.
There is a question by Hamza Sheikh, which is about how do we need to redefine how we define architecture practice for young people, and how would you define it? But I'll take it one further and maybe say if architects in practice are to adopt any of those tools that you know, obviously you three have developed or used, how easy would that be? So I'll give each opportunity to answer. Sarah, do you want to start first?
So how easy is to, I think engaging children is not something nice to do. It's something that we have to do as urban practitioners if we want to design cities that meet their needs, ideas and expectation. Of course, in order to do that, you also need to be prepared. You need to have the right tools, the right skills, the right capacity, and also you need to have like the right training so that you don't create mistakes. You don't do mistakes because it's you know, for data management or privacy or all these things. So it's very important that people that engage children, they have the knowledge and the preparation also to do that. It's not sometimes, for people who never done it, it can be something very difficult, but the problem is not on children, it's on us as urban practitioners, that we need to learn, we need to study, to be humble, and to really find ways for engaging them in a way that is meaningful and that also, on the other hand, empower them. Because it's not just about getting ideas from children to create more child-friendly cities, is also the process of engaging them that I think is equally important, or maybe more important, because it's a process of giving them, to empower them, to build the trust and the confidence that they need, and also to create a space where they can feel safe and they feel confident that what they say, what they want, is actually, there is someone else on the other side that is listening to that and that act against it. So is the process that is important, and is the tools and the preparation that is required to do that. And of course, there are guidelines and protocols that needs to be followed. But I think is very trying to understand, depending on the context where you're operating, what are the right tools. And there are hundreds of them that can be used. It's important to be open and to really to also challenge ourselves as practitioners to find the right way for engaging with them.
Bobby, we'll come to you. Same question, but...
Yes, sure. I think this is a very, very interesting and also a very important question, because somehow, say, for example, if something needs to be redesigned, whatever scale it is, and you go to an architect or an urban designer, the idea is, fine, they are the expert and they have all the answers. So when we go to this end user, the stakeholder, like children or whoever the client is, it's like we ask them, like, so what do you actually want? It's almost like, so I just tell you, but you still have all the answers. I think that relationship, maybe it's time we don't take that for granted, or look at the architect as the one with all the answers. Like, no, like in the way our city is, it's our backdrop for our everyday life, and we're all equal stakeholders in it. And sometimes having a tech like this that puts the two in a sort of equal ground, to say, because we both experience the space as is. Like before, it was the architect who can make things up in their head and try and communicate it. But now, with hopefully use of VR and AR, we're not restricted. So hopefully it's that relationship that can maybe begin to change.
No, I think that's a very relevant point. I mean, it kind of echoes to that first project, Blind, that you showed us about the school being redesigned by the young people. But if in your practice, are young people redefining architectural practice, or would you redefine architectural practice from the Irish Architectural Foundation perspective? Maybe you have a different definition.
So I suppose I'd be looking at, ways in. If I was thinking about helping young people to understand a definition of architecture, I mean, first of all, I think there is no one definition of architecture or architectural practice, But if I'd be looking at ways in first. So the way in would be, for example, through the Minecraft or through, for example, but also through art practice as well, visual art strategies, using different materials, maybe creative writing, maybe film as well, to open up a conversation or an understanding about space and architecture. Maybe music as well. There was one project I was working on, and a student had moved through a building with their music, and so that very understanding of the spatial nature of the school. So I suppose different lens. I look at exploring a definition and exploring students' own definition of our young people's own definitions of architecture through diverse lenses, really, and then coming back out from that and then looking at it collaboratively to reach an understanding, but an understanding that's very meaningful to the young people involved.
We have 4 minutes. I think I'm going to pass the baton to each one of you for like a minute if you want to do like a closing remark, and then I will conclude. But I've just been really interested in the sort of the overlaps in terms of agency and sort of listening to young people in all the projects that you kind of demonstrated. And obviously, as as we said, it doesn't need to be all young people, it could be all people. But 1 minute, like 40 seconds to kind of wrap up. What is the one takeaway? I mean, we have practitioners, we have a wide audience listening to this. What is the one takeaway that you would say to people that want to use digital tools to kind of engage young people and use technology? Sarah?
Yeah, so I think the takeaway is that the tools are important, and there are many of them available, digital or non. Digital, of course, they're more interesting for children, for youth, because it's their language right now. But I think it's the process that is more important, because through a meaningful, engaging process, you actually build the trust, the confidence of the children for today and for the future. So it's both things that are very important, I think.
I think for me, well, there is definitely potential in using all sort of virtual tools, but I think we're still not in a place where we can take access to such technologies for granted. So there is that big question of inclusive growth. So there are challenges on ground because tech is still evolving. It doesn't work all the time. Sometimes it just fails. So we're still learning. So we are still in that learning process.
What about you, Blaine?
For me, in my work, it would be learning from young people. So listening to them, being responsive to what they have to say, and then learning. And with the example that I gave with the Architects in Schools project, I became aware of that project. And then by being open to it, I suppose, and learning from those students and inviting them into events, the teachers' event and the public event, we learned a lot from them, and it went on to inspire many other schools to work with Minecraft and other platforms. So I think, yeah, learning from young people would be key for me. We
have 1 minute to the end. I am very proud of my time management, but I'm sure people who, there were several questions that came in the last few minutes. I think Victoria probably have to do another event just on digital in metaverse and everything like that. But thank you very much for the talks. I'm sure people have okay to contact you if they have any more questions. And yeah, we are going to share the recording, a summary, and obviously slides. So please, if you have any more questions about any of the tools, or you want to engage any of the organizations that our speakers represent, just drop them an email. I'm sure they'll be happy to kind of engage you. And yeah, I think that's all, unless Victoria, you want to say a closing remark. I'll put you on the spot here, but otherwise we are banging the event. And no? All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. And this is really, really interesting. And as somebody who's currently just finishing writing their PhD on a similar topic, I am going to quote all three of you in my PhD. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.